the problem people have with understanding monopolies is sometimes natural monopolies exist temporarily because someone is better at their job than anyone else. And that's not a bad thing. That means you're providing a service that people want more effectively than anyone else can do it. And as long as you're going to do that, you're going to have the best market share. But if someone else provides the service better, you're going to be out of luck. And you have to constantly be vigilant to make sure you are keeping your product cutting edge. I mean, my friend Sean Malone at Fee has been talking about this with Netflix. And Netflix had a first mover advantage on this streaming video or home delivery video, that they were the first ones to do it. And there was no competition for a little while. And they drove Blockbuster right out of business. And it was like, that's what you do. You get Netflix. But now there's Hulu, there's Amazon Prime, there's Disney Plus, there's I subscribe to Shudder, the horror movie channel. There's a million other options. And if Netflix doesn't stay the best, they're going to drive people away. And they already have driven a lot of people away. I left Netflix because Obama picks the shows, for one thing, but also because they kept taking away all my shows that I wanted to watch. And I'm like, why am I paying for this? All the shows I wanted to watch are gone. So I stopped paying for it and I subscribed to Shudder instead. And so these monopolies are very ephemeral. They don't last very long, and people will come in and find a better way of doing business. And I don't see any argument that is convincing to me that it's impossible for someone to compete with Facebook. I think Facebook just does it best right now. And as soon as someone else does it better, they're going to be gone. The same way MySpace was gone.
Do you think, or what do you think of the argument that we should treat these social media platforms like utilities? I don't know too much about that argument. I've heard it a few times, like, since it's used for someone will say, like, imagine you're on the phone with we're on the phone and I'm saying, hey, did you see that New York Post article about Hunter Biden? And then Verizon doesn't like what I'm saying to you, and they cut off our conversation.
Right.
Is that a fair comparison to social media stifling that conversation? I
think Verizon would very rapidly go out of business if they did that. But there's also a problem with state-created monopolies on these things, with the utilities. The problem with utilities, like when they tried to regulate the internet as a utility, if you read the legislation and what utilities are, they're basically government-run businesses. The government has an immense amount of control over what they can do and how they're run, and they can shut down competition. The reason that there's no competition for cable providers is because of local and state government regulations, where they're giving exclusive rights to certain companies, and no other companies can come in and compete. That doesn't exist with websites. A Facebook doesn't have any exclusive government-granted rights to have users that other sites can't have. Any website can start. I could start a website tomorrow and say, hey, come join my website. It's better than Facebook. No one could stop me from doing that. And the startup costs are pretty low, because it doesn't cost very much to build a website. I mean, I'm sure the infrastructure in building one as big and as complicated as Facebook is expensive, but it's nothing compared to like running a cable provider service. So I don't think it's entirely a fair analogy. But also, I think, if there's legitimate competition in a market, anyone who tries to act that badly is quickly going to lose customers to the competition. And so I don't think it's a good idea. I did study antitrust economics in grad school, and I, walked away from the class more convinced than ever that it's a thorny, problematic area of law, because it's so vague and it can be so easily abused, as you point out, to stifle competition. It's not just monopolies being broken up. It's also prohibitions on bundling, where you can't put two products together. The most famous antitrust case was Microsoft tried to bundle Internet Explorer with their operating system. And they said, you can't do that because we want to give extra power to Netscape, which is sold separately. No one's going to buy Netscape for $50 if they get Internet Explorer bundled free on Windows.
That would have helped out the average consumer.
It would have helped out the average consumer immensely, because now they don't have to spend $50 on Netscape. They can just get the thing that comes out with their operating system. But so it's a real problem. And the real sticking point for me, I think, on antitrust economics is market definition. Because what is a monopoly? Monopoly is defined as one company has 100% market share in a market. But what's the market? The market is arbitrary. It can be defined as anything. I like to use like beverages as an example for the market. Okay. Coca-Cola has a monopoly on Coca-Cola. No other company can sell Coca-Cola besides Coca-Cola. But Coca-Cola doesn't have a monopoly on cola. It doesn't have a monopoly on soda. It doesn't have a monopoly on soft drinks. And it certainly doesn't have a monopoly on drinks. So depending on whether you define the market as Coca-Cola, cola, soda, soft drinks, or drinks, the market share of Coca-Cola changes dramatically from 100% to almost nothing. And, so how do you decide whether something's a monopoly? It's ultimately a judgment call that some politician has to make. And I think that's really dangerous.
Yeah, and monopolies, I don't know if there's an example of a long-term natural monopoly that ever existed. it's a more blackboard economics, sit in the class. But every monopoly had somehow a great lobbyist that went and got a carve out from government that blocked the competition.